Welcome to the class on using contests for publishing success. We're so excited to have you here, and I'm really excited to introduce you to Dana, who is a rock star writer. She's really rocking it with contests and has had a lot of success in her career, and she's here today to really share that information with you. And thank you for your great posts over in the chat. You can if at any time you have a question, go ahead and pop it over there. I'll be looking over there as Dana walks us through the process. So Dana, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you're writing and how long you've been writing and what it is that you like to work on.
Okay. The thing I want to mention is writing is something, it's really my first love, but it's my second career. I had a first career as a CPA, which is about the farthest thing away from writing. But I've actually been doing screenwriting for 7 years. I like to do comedy. That usually is the place where I'm the most comfortable. And let's see how I can say this. I made the second round of the Austin screenwriting competition in 2015. Up until that time, I had been doing mostly screenplays, but the folks out there convinced me to give sitcoms a try. Shortly after that, at the Writers Center Writers Digest conference in New York, I met Annalisa. We started working together, and so we've been working on a couple of sitcoms, which I plan to begin pitching early next year. So that's really the evolution of what I've been doing, and contests have been a big part of that in terms of just helping me refine my work, and it's helped me in terms of just some mechanics. So I'm going to try to share some of that. There are some downsides to it as well, and certainly the rewards with it are kind of iffy. So I'm going to try to be very balanced in what I suggest.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dana. That's really helpful for us to get an idea of what you're doing and how long you've been doing it. So talk to us a little bit. Patrick is wondering how and where you get started in writing contests. So talk to us about how you started that and what that looked like.
I started really by talking to other people who were in competitions, and that's something I would recommend for anyone, whether you're a novelist or a screenwriter, whatever form of writing that you're in. I would recommend talking to other people who do that same form of writing, because there are going to be top contests in that. I think that there are a lot of contests in all forms of writing, and you have to be kind of careful. Some of them are, just things where you're going to end up maybe paying money or sending out your work, and you don't always know where you're sending it. So it's always important to make sure the place where you send it is reputable.
Mhm.
And that the best way to be sure of that is talking to other people who are doing the same thing.
Yeah, so you would recommend as a verification process checking in with other people who enter contests. So maybe even like Write to Publish would be a really great place for people to ask
Absolutely.
questions like that. Okay.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
checking online, there are usually lists of the top contests. The only thing that I would mention with that, of course, top contests tend to have a lot of people competing in them. So you need to be realistic about your chances of, winning. But again, there's a lot of good that you can find from that experience, even without taking the top prize.
Right. So tell us a little bit about that. So, some people think that maybe a contest is, about winning, and certainly it can be, but what are some other benefits of the contest process?
One of the things that I found, and I think this has been true from other people I've talked to, contests can help you in terms of getting some of the mechanics down. I'm going to talk more about screenwriting since this is something I'm more familiar with. But as you are getting ready to enter in a contest, one of the things that it's going to do is impose a deadline for you. A lot of new writers are writing on spec. They do not have a place where they have to send their work. And I'm as guilty of this as anyone else. We have lives, we have friends, we have things going on. And so our self imposed deadlines tend to kind of slide. And it happens. Maybe in January it's snowing. You have things happening with that. Your car breaks down. Maybe there's a situation with the family, and then we're into March, and oh wow, the NCAA tournament's on, and I want to watch the games. And then it's nice weather. It's summer. It's vacation, and next thing you know, it's the fall, and wow, your project isn't done. And it can happen that way. I mean, I'm not saying it does for everyone, but sometimes it does. And with a contest, it's a hard and fast deadline. It is a way of disciplining yourself to say, wow, I've got to get this done because I've got to make this contest deadline. Now, granted, you could just say, well, I'm going to blow off the contest, but if you commit to it, it can be a way of disciplining yourself to get that draft done. Also, if you look down the registration requirements for the contest, it's going to help you look a little bit and think a little bit differently about your work.
Mhm.
It's going to make you look at genre. It's going to make it for like a sitcom, it may make you think in terms of, do I want multi-camera? Do I want single camera? That kind of thing. And those are decisions that you may have to make to enter in the contest. It's also going to get you familiar with the process of copywriting, registration, those kinds of things. So these are all good habits to put in place.
Those are some really excellent tips, Dana, around just the benefits of doing contests, even if you don't win and get that benefit. That's really, really helpful. Now, let's talk a little bit about the financial investment because many contests do cost money to enter, and certainly that might be some incentive to stick to that deadline if you've already made that investment. But one of the conversations that a lot of my writer friends have is, are we willing to spend money on entering a contest, or are we against that in principle? So where do you stand on that, and how did you come to that philosophy?
Uh, of course, it's not something that I would prefer not to spend the money on something like that if I didn't have to.
Mhm.
But I will do it if I think it's worthwhile from a professional standpoint. One thing I will mention, a lot of contests have early deadlines. So if money is an incentive to you, you can say, wow, I'll get my draft done a little more quickly and it doesn't cost me as much to enter this. The other thing that I have tended to do is seek out contests where they give you written feedback. So
Mhm.
even if you're not winning in the contest, you are getting something back because you're being told why you didn't advance. And now sometimes, Annalisa and I've talked about this, some of this feedback that you get is not always so helpful, but sometimes it is. And again, it's just another way of saying, wow, I didn't just write this check for X number of dollars and now it's gone.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. Just getting that professional feedback, which is something we talk about a lot in Write to Publish. And of course, in my writing, I think probably everybody in here knows how I feel about quality feedback. So Andrew has a really good question about the weight of contests and sort of deciding, we have limited time, we have limited money, we have limited resources. So how do we really decide what kinds of contests we should enter, like how we're going to advance our career with those contests?
First off, I don't recommend being involved in a lot of contests. For one thing, if you are paying, it's a lot of money. And also, it distracts you, I think, to be involved in too many. The rule of thumb I've heard is no more than five, but I honestly go even lower than that. I think you have to look at your kind of writing and what you're trying to achieve with it.
Mhm.
And that's especially true if you're a genre writer. I think you need to look at contests that are specifically tailored to your genre.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really good question, or a really good point. If you're a poet, don't start entering screenwriting competitions. That doesn't make any sense. So when you say 5, do you mean 5 at any given time? Do you mean 5 per year? What's the timeline there?
I think most of the big ones are annual, so yeah, you could do 5 a year. Although I honestly think 5 is a lot, because that it's, again, if you're paying for even 2 or 3 of them, that's a pretty good financial outlay, and it's also a fair bit of anxiety to have it all out there, and it is not a little bit of time in terms of just the entrance and going through the requirements and like that. But everyone's different in how they go after that, of course.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. What kind of preparation is involved before you're pushing that send button to make your submission?
One thing you need to do is take a look at the requirements. They can have some very picky stuff. For example, they'll want a particular type of font, and you certainly don't want your submission to be rejected because you don't have the right font.
Mhm.
Uh, they can have restrictions on page limit too, which can be a real issue for some people. I mean, I think most folks stay within a certain limit. I'm thinking in particular of someone that I knew who wrote a 400-page spec script and frankly, and couldn't enter it anywhere because none of the contests would take it at that length. So you definitely want to read those things. You want to make sure that you are complying with all of that. And I also look at the frequently asked questions just to get a look at, just to make sure your expectations are accurate as far as what's going to happen in terms of the contest, how long it's going to take to get back to you, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, those are really good points. So Lisa's asking a question here, and I know this is something you and I have discussed in the past, Dana. But she's making the point that sometimes you enter a contest and you think you've got a pretty good shot. You think you've got a solid story, a solid script, solid poem, whatever it is, and then you see the winner and you think, that wasn't quite what I would have thought would win. So how do you kind of reconcile that, after you've entered the contest? And then how does that inform you before you enter a contest as far as thinking about, what are the judges looking for and what have I learned so far?
I think one thing that I have learned in going through this a few times is that it's really hard to predict what is going to win in any given year. I've kind of given up on it because you think that you're you're going to be able to predict, or even looking at the semifinalists, you think, oh, I can tell this one's going to make it, and then they won't. It's very hard to know because the readers on these contests are not the same year in and year out. That's a point to think about. And if your particular submission doesn't come back, again, this varies with contests, but remember that in a lot of times, it's one reader can keep you from advancing. So if you are feeling downhearted about it, remember it's one person that who just didn't quite connect to your work, and that doesn't necessarily mean that there is anything wrong with what you wrote.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to keep being true to yourself, true to your voice, and continue to put your work out there.
That's really encouraging to hear you say that. Just keeping things in perspective, really, I think is what you're talking about. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about, like, let's say, somebody comes to you and you've only got 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes, and you want to give your very biggest tip, like, here's what you should do when it comes to contests. What would you tell that person?
I would tell them to first do your homework, make sure that this is the contest that you want to enter, and also just write, get as close to your story and feel as comfortable with your story as you can. Do the very best job you can. Submit it and know that you have done the very best that you can. I mean, in the end, that's all any of us can ask.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. And the other thing there is just keeping in perspective, what you can get out of it. Obviously, we all want to be winners, and winning is really great, and we get to, put that on our resume or whatever. But the experience itself and what we learn in our writing is ultimately the most important, especially the way that you're doing it, Dana, in choosing contests deliberately, because no matter what, you're going to get some of that professional feedback.
I'm going to share a story here because Annalisa knows this already because she went through it with me. It's not all good. I entered a contest with a pilot, and I thought that I had done a really good job with the pilot, and Annalisa liked it as well. Sent it out, and let's just say the reader just plain hated it.
Mm-hmm.
I got absolutely scathing feedback on that. I mean, it was not the easiest thing to come back from, and I will not lie and say it was. But what I did was I had to look at it, and my first thought was, oh, this person is just, and never mind what I thought, but pretty darned unprintable. But after I went through it and all, I did go back and look and try to think from that person's perspective why they might have written what they wrote. And it actually gave me a completely different avenue on that series. It wasn't fun, but I think in the end, it made the series better.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can go through that process, if you can be, honest with yourself and take that and then go back and put that into your work, it can make you better. This process can make you better. It's not fun at times, but I think it's important.
Yeah, you raise a really good point there, because I remember that conversation that we had this spring, and it was scathing. However, there was that one nugget of information, that once we kind of extrapolated that, we were able to be really productive about where we took the script next and what that looked like. So that was helpful in the end, although I do agree that the method with which the person gave feedback was maybe not so helpful. But we're moving on.
Yeah, we moved on.
We moved on
I actually resubmitted to that contest and requested a different reader, which you can do with some of them. And the second take on it was a lot more positive. So you make lemonade out of the lemons. That's all.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really appreciate about you, Dana, and one of the things that I think you can be a real positive role model for other writers in is your resilience, and also your willingness to learn. And I think that those are two really strong attributes of successful writers, and it's why you're getting so much success out of this process, keeping things in perspective and really treating them like the learning experiences that they are.
Thanks, Annalisa. I hope so. I mean, it's the thing is, I would say is I spent time doing something that wasn't my first choice in life. And it's great to be able to do the thing that I really wanted to do all along. The worst day writing beats the best day accounting.
That's your meme that's coming out. Dana's quote of the year. Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit, because you and I have been working together for quite some time now. So talk to us a little bit about where you were when you started with me versus where you are today. And pay no
I,
attention to the dog in the background.
I think when I started with you, um, well, I had ideas about where I wanted to go, but I don't think that I had the knowledge of how to get there. And it's one of the great things about working with you is that you seem to know how to get in there and figure out what I'm trying to say, but can't really enunciate at times. And that has been so great. I mean, it's so wonderful to have the opportunity to talk with someone who can kind of do that what if with you. Well, what if we tried this or what if we tried that? And not everyone has that skill. So I really appreciate the, those phone calls, where we can talk through these things.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I think that I virtually saw Stephen Oliver nodding his head because he and I have a lot of those fun conversations as well. So I happen to know, because I'm on the inside track, about you becoming much more prolific in the time that we've worked together. But is there a measure there that you can state, before you were writing, I don't know, 12 pages a day, and now you're writing 300? That would be amazing, right? But what does that look like for you?
I am definitely more prolific, although I have some situations that uh, prevent me from being able to write for long periods of time. I was in a fairly serious car accident 14 years ago, so I've got chronic neck pain and fibromyalgia. I can't write more than about a half hour or 45 minutes at a time. I have to get up and walk around. So uh, being prolific for me is different than being prolific for a lot of other people.
Mhm.
I would say I am, of course, it used to be before I was working with you, just getting my blog posts out every week was my work for the week. And now I'm getting out the blog posts, I'm getting out work on the series, I'm looking into new projects. And of course, we're going to be working on a novel starting the first part of next year, and I'm doing background work on that. So it's the number of additional projects that I'm doing, I think, that would would be the measure of the productivity.
That's amazing. I love that grin. And I don't even know the answer to this question. How many contests have you entered since we've been working together?
Let's see. I guess it would be four.
Okay. Okay. So you haven't reached your own personal maximum.
Oh no, I haven't. No, I haven't.
I love that. That's really great. So, when we met, Dana, you already had this blog, you had been writing was your thing. You certainly weren't a beginner. You had some knowledge and some craft skills. So talk to us a little bit about that, sort of where you were in your journey, when, and sort of how it came to be that you decided that a writing coach would be the right choice for you at that point.
I think it had to do with the fact that I was trying to create that first series, and I was into a completely new writing area. I did not know what to do with it. I had taken a couple of courses, but still felt very much in the weeds. I went to the Writer's Digest conference in New York, and I happened to walk by your table. We were talking, and so I scheduled an hour to sit down and talk with you. And I just felt so comfortable talking with you that I thought, oh, I really would like the opportunity to be able to talk with you on a regular basis, because I thought you were someone who would really help me through that process. And I think I'm totally right. Was totally right on that.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And in your lifetime, you're in a second career, post career. I don't know how you define that for yourself. So talk to us a little bit about, what writing at that phase in your life is like.
What you mean, just as opposed to what I was doing earlier?
Yeah, like to become a writer at this point, to kind of launch into that at this phase of your lifetime.
It's uh, it's really good. I mean, I wrote when I was doing accounting work, but it always had to be secondary. It had
Hmm.
to be after you got things done, and of course, you got absolutely no writing done during tax season. So it was always, when everything else got taken care of. I think the nice thing was being able to make writing a priority as opposed to always having to put it at the bottom of the list.
Right, right, right. So Patrick has a really good question. He's wondering, I'll read his question to you verbatim. Do you find it more effective to work on one item at a time or multiple projects concurrently?
For me, it is better to work on multiple projects, and that is not, I would say maybe two or three at a time, not more than that. Part of that is I also kind of have to because I'm doing a weekly blog, and so I blog posts have to kind of jump in there. But I find that to be very helpful because if you have a period where you're feeling blocked on something, you can simply leave that project for a bit, move on to something else, and it usually allows you to sort of reset as far as the first project.
Yeah, and I mean, you're working on big projects. I mean, for those of you out there who are novelists and not writing teleplays, it's the equivalent of a novel, what Dana is doing, and she's working on two of them right now concurrently, and we kind of go back and forth depending on where she is and what she's doing right now. Do you want to add anything to that, Dana?
Not really. You're making me feel much better because you always feel as though you're kind of juggling, but on the other hand, they are projects that I love. I'm taking all of this on voluntarily, and I really enjoy them. I'm enjoying the characters, and so it that helps a lot.
Yeah, and they're hilarious. When they come on television, all of us, all you people, we're gonna get together, we're gonna get some popcorn and we're gonna watch them because they're so funny. Like it's all I can do not to pee my pants when I read your scripts. They're very funny. And so Shanera, who's left the discussion, but she made a point earlier that I thought was really apt to a lot of the conversations that we've had. She said, sometimes I feel it's like the Oscars. The funny, lighthearted genre stuff never wins, whereas the deep, somber stuff with a message always wins, no matter what the quality. So that's something that you and I have talked about a lot. Um,
Yep.
and I think that can be true across the board, regardless of which silo of writing we're in. I mean, certainly you and I have seen that in the teleplay world, which is ironic because I wrote for 3 seasons of comedy television, so clearly it's out there and people think it's funny, but I guess only sometimes. Late at night, that's when we get to be funny. Yeah, but I think it's true. I've read a lot of poorly written books that they're New York Times bestsellers. They've sold 1 million copies, and it's because it's that kind of pulling on the heartstrings cheese that people seem to like. Great. So you've mentioned your blog a couple of times. Dana has a great blog. Tell us about your blog and where people can find it and read your writing over there.
It's called Thinking Cinema, and it's at www.thinkingcinema.com. I started it because I got a little frustrated with, screenwriters. Um, I am a huge fan of, well, all film. I watch classics. I watch silent film. I watch documentaries. I watch foreign films. I watch it all. And when I started screenwriting, I thought that other screenwriters would be like that. as well. And I was a little stunned when I found a lot of them were not.
Mm.
And so I started the blog as a way of showing that the same ideas and the same themes show up in film on a recurring basis. So what I'm doing every week is I'm reviewing a film, then I'm writing an article on a non-current film with that same theme, and I'm preparing a short list of films with that same theme, and then I invite readers to send in suggestions if they know other films.
Yeah, and it's very well written. It's a really nice blog. So I highly recommend that you check out Dana's work. For those of you who are in the Right to Publish group, Dana's in there too. So if you want to say hello to her, you can just post on the wall and tell her how awesome you thought this content was. Dana, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your expertise. Is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you were like burning to share as a tip with our listeners?
No, I think you've covered. Annalisa, thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you. This is great. So next week, we're going to have Stephen Oliver on here. And so one of the things that you were saying, Dana, really resonated with my experience with Stephen. You know, you were talking about film writers who aren't, screenwriters who aren't consuming the product that they're producing. And you know, for those of you who have read Storytelling for Pantsers, you know how strongly I feel about writers being readers. And one of the things that I love about Stephen, and the reason why we're working on a top agent right now, and I'm really sure we're going to get it, is because his writing shows that he reads. He understands how story works, and it's beautiful how it comes out on the page. And you know, I know that that's true over in your world too, Dana, as far as, you know, if you're going to write movies, like watch movies in all genres from all time periods, just consume, know what's out there, know what's been done, how did they do it. It's really, really important. It's a super top tip. Stephen says he's blushing. So go ahead, Dana.
Question is on your chat. Should I be looking at that? Are there any questions I should be addressing, or is that all?
I've been reading them to you. So Stephen's wondering what the URL is. Stephen, it's www.thinkingcinema.com. Did I get that right, Dana?
Yep.
Awesome. And there's this amazing blog entry there from, I don't know, maybe a month ago about this book called Storytelling for Pantsers. It's on.
Yes.
Yes, thank you for that review. That was really generous. So yes, next week, Stephen is going to be speaking with us about what he does and sharing his expertise in the writing world. I'm really excited for that. Thank you, Dana, for being a part of this series. For those of you who are listening, please do give your thanks and shout out to Dana over in the group and thank her for her time. This has been really wonderful. Thank you so much, Dana.
Thanks, Annalisa.
Bye-bye.